Hanging baskets can be a great colourful addition to any garden. But the trouble is, in summertime you can end up watering them twice a day, and this can be an arduous task, especially when the amount of water that you put into the top often doesn't reach the plant roots. It goes straight through the basket and onto your feet. And that's why the clever guys at Plantwell have come up with this, a great little device that you can put in your hanging basket or planted trough, and the water, when you put it in the top here, percolates slowly through the holes, which means the water gets directly into the roots rather than spilling over and going onto your feet. The Plantwell was designed and is manufactured in the UK, and it's made from plastic which is fully recyclable. But I think it's going to last you quite a few years. Because you can snap it in half at the end of the season and clean it out and sterilise it, you can just clip it back together and use it in your autumn bedding scheme. Using the Plantwell can save up to 90% of the water when compared with the traditional hanging basket, and in our trials we had 25% more growth and more flowers. If you've got a large hanging basket or container that you need to water, you can use several of these planted at different spacings. I think they'd also be great if you were to use them in grow bags, because you could plant them at either side of the tomatoes and you can feed directly into there so that all that food and nutrition gets right to the roots where it's needed. But I'm just going to use it to plant up a regular hanging basket. I've got a selection of bedding plants here which I'm going to use to plant up this hanging basket, and most of them are trailing, but I've got this verbena which I'm going to plant centrally in the hanging basket because that'll give us some height and then everything else will trail around it. Now this is a traditional way to plant up a hanging basket, but you might say, where does this go? Because ideally it should go there centrally so that when you pour the water in it gets evenly distributed around the basket. But because I like to plant something centrally, I'm going to offset this slightly. Now the first step is to fill the bottom with compost, and you want around 5 centimetres of compost in the base. Place the Plantwell centrally into the basket and then fill up with soil. If you're using a basket like this with a prefabricated liner, then remember to puncture the plastic. But if you're using a traditionally moss-lined basket, it's a good idea to put a small disc of plastic in the bottom which acts as a kind of extra water well. And by planting something like this verbena in the centre, which will give some height, and these lobelia and petunias which will trail down, you'll have an amazing looking hanging basket. And because of the Plantwell, it'll be really easy to water. I would advise that when you first planted it up, you give it a good watering all over the top to make sure that that compost gets really well wetted. And then when you've hung it up in its final position, all you'll need to do is water it into the Plantwell. And if you make sure you water it every day, twice a day if it's really hot, you'll have fantastic blooms, and I think that's a hanging basket to be proud of.